Now then, dumelang. Hello, sanbonani, molweni, all the good stuff. My name is Tepo, and every once in a while, I get thoughts in my head, and I hate writing stuff down. It's never been me. I tried it for like a year. I stopped at like March or something, right? And the rest of my diary last day was just pfft. So I've decided to basically just do these things in video form. And these are kind of like my thoughts. This is going to be second video that I put out. And the last time was like, what, 4 months ago or something like that? I don't know, right? And really this one is going to be a very simple question, a straightforward question. And it's, do black people still have a kind of inferiority complex in this country? And by black people, I don't mean colored people aren't included, or Indian people, or people of different demographics and stuff like that, right? I'm talking about black people because it is my experience as a black person, and I don't think I could ever speak for someone else who comes from a different group with different experiences and stuff like that, right? Now, this is an interesting question. It's a very interesting question because I come across people either in real life or in social media or on platforms and stuff like that, right? Where people like to just pretend that South Africans operate on a kind of level, playing field, right? People like to pretend that the consequences of our past do not still, to a very large extent, haunt us today, right? I'm sure you've seen it somewhere, usually on like Twitter or something, right? People, usually white people, who love to say things like, oh, get over it. It's been 26 years or something like that. Get over it. It's done, right? That's I can imagine how easy it is to say something like that. I can imagine, especially since you yourself are not really, you're not subject to the consequences of a lot of the nonsense that happened in this country, right? You were just born into a society that identified people that look like you and said, hey, dude, people that look like you are, in many cases, the causes of a lot of the issues that we face in this country, right? I'm going to say that. And it's a fact. Blunt, it's a fact, okay? As much as people love to say, oh, the ANC this, the ANC that. The ANC is horrible. No one is denying that, okay? But the idea that we're going to reduce the struggles that we're facing in this country to just bad ANC governance is nonsense. If anything, bad ANC governance is like 10% of the issues that we face in this country. Okay, you have to remember, the issues that we face in this country are not just economic, but they're social as well. Okay, we have more socio-economic, but very social at the same time. Okay, the social part plays a large role in the just kind of like the fabric of this country. Okay, ranging all the way from the things that 90% of the population were subjected to, and the fact that a lot of those systems, a lot of you should just look at like the segregation that still happens in like schools, right? You look at the segregation that happens in housing, you look at the segregation that happens in like the work sector and stuff like that. It's still in effect. And the idea of just telling people to just move on, which by the way, it's going to be a topic that I make a video on, I hope, at some point in the future, where I expand on that particular subject. But for now, I want to talk about, I wanted to kind of like start off with like a kind of anecdote. But it's not just an anecdote, it's a symptom of a much broader kind of disease, really, that we need to get rid of in this country, especially as black people, right? I remember when I went to my when I went to university for my first year, I was studying mechanical engineering, right? And I remember my father, my stepfather, who asked me basically, "Hey, what have you decided to study?" You know, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, I've decided to do mechanical engineering," and he was so happy. He was extremely happy, and but perhaps that's not what I took away from that conversation. What I took away was the following words that came out of his mouth just after he smiled, and he said, "Wait, those words, Nto tsa makgowa." For those who don't speak Sesotho, it basically means you're doing white people things now. The implicit kind of assumption there basically being that if you're doing mechanical engineering or if you want to be a doctor or anything, those are things for white people. Those are not things for black people and stuff like that, right? And in that moment, I was disgusted. I was disgusted to basically listen to someone say that I am doing something that was never really for me. And the main reason for this is of my skin color. You know, I was offended. I was really extremely offended, right? Until time went on, basically, and I realized that a lot of the things that we think, a lot of the biases that we have, are not self-inflicted. They come very much from society, right? And you see it a lot in, older people in our society, older black people, right? You see just the way in which they tend to respect authority, for example. You see the way in which the kind of inferiority complex is there, in the sense that older black people have a much higher propensity to just being content with being like in a job that pays very low wages and stuff like that, right? Not to say that's a bad thing. What I'm trying to explain to you, right, is that conditioning can lead people to wanting to be here, when in actual fact they can be here. In apartheid, one of the highest achievements you could have as like a teacher, as like a black person, right, was to be a teacher. You weren't really allowed to be in high positions in business, in corporate, and pretty much in government. Oh no, God forbid in government. You weren't allowed to be in high positions in pretty much anything, and one of the was being a teacher was like a big thing. And I remember growing up, like the whole teacher, nurse thing, engineer thing, those are like the stereotypical kind of careers that are advertised to us as kids in like a school, and I'm getting off a tangent here. But what I'm trying to say, I guess, is I look back and I finally understand now, right, that for someone like my father, who never really got educated, he never finished matric or anything like that, and for someone like him, his child aspiring to do big things in life, right, is beyond his wildest dreams, to the point where that kind of mentality kind of comes back of, I was never allowed to do this back in my day. And because of that, a kind of mentality sinks in, a kind of unconscious sort of like brain, that seeps in at the back of your head and basically just tells you, because you didn't finish matric and stuff like that, you don't deserve better in life, right? And this is a lot of the time, this is the mentality that a lot of like older black people seem to have. The idea of not deserving more, the idea of not deserving better, right? Like you see it all the time, really. The unconscious bias of whenever a white person makes something for you, whenever a white person compliments you and stuff like that, you take that at higher regard than when a black person compliments you, right? You can extrapolate it to like business, for example. Okay, whenever a black person opens a business, it's assumed that they're shady. It's assumed that their products are not as to the same quality that the business that, for example, a white person might open. Okay, and it makes me sad. It really does. It bothers me that someone like me, from a societal standpoint, is sometimes not valid to his own people. It bothers me that someone like me has to work much, much harder just to gain kind of like social capital. It bothers me that that's the case, right? And as much as people love to sit here and pretend that this is really not the case, they love to sit here and pretend that, equal opportunity, everyone, which, by the way, isn't even the case, okay? I will be making a video about a lot of the stuff that has been happening with regards to, BEE and so on, right? And just how, like, people are wrong when it comes to issues kinds of like that, okay? Now, I don't know if I made sense in this video, but if there's anything that I want you to take from it, it's this. Brawaga, mfwetu. You need to do some self-reflection. It's important because a lot of the time you get to, it's almost like you get to realize certain things that you never even thought applied to you. I've had to come to terms with basically the realization that I tend to fight to favor certain types of businesses over others. And the criteria that I use to favor these businesses over others is nonsense. It makes absolutely no sense. Okay? For example, anything that is black made, anything that is black originated, anything that comes from black people, I don't think it has the same quality as something that comes, for example, from a white business and stuff like that. Okay? And it's painful. It's a painful realization that I myself have had to come to terms with. It's a realization that I myself have had to really fight, because that's what usually happens, when you have a different kind of like train of thought for the first time. Your already existing kind of mentality, it fights, just tells you, man, it's just another thought. Don't scatter sporong, don't derail the current mission, that is the one thing that I would encourage anyone to do more than anything else. Introspection. Realize that you yourself have biases, and also understand that not having biases is not necessarily a bad thing. But the question is, what are the biases that you have? And do you reinforce those biases in your everyday life, right? And this is kind of something that I came to realization of, like, it's a kind of inferiority complex that I used to have when I looked at black businesses and thought to myself, it's probably not the same quality. When I looked at a black person who's selling products, and I think to myself sometimes that those are probably stolen. Because let's not lie to ourselves, right? A lot of the bad things, the vast majority of bad things in this country are associated with being black. Criminal behavior, being unruly, not being educated and stuff like that, right? A lot of these things are associated with being black. And it seeps into us, man. It seeps into society. It seeps into your kind of unconscious mind. And most people don't even get to notice it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say for now. This will be my second kind of entry into my I don't know if it's a diary or reflection book or what, but yeah, I'll I'll make a video about other things later on. But for now, have a nice day, and share the video, like, and all that other good stuff. Subscribe, most definitely subscribe. Okay. Yeah, man, that's all I have to say for now, and have a good day. Thank you.